A Dutch court on Friday ordered oil company Shell to pay compensation in a case brought by 4 Nigerian farmers who alleged widespread pollution on their land. Now, after 13 years of legal battle, an appeals court in The Hague ruled that Shell's Nigerian branch must pay for damage caused by oil spills. It also held the Anglo-Dutch parent company Royal Dutch Shell liable for installing new pipeline equipment to prevent further devastating spills in the Niger Delta region. The court ruled that the amount of damages would be determined later and did not specify how many of the 4 farmers would receive compensation.
And for more on this story, we're joined by Nnimmo Bassey, Nigerian architect, environmental activist, author and poet, who chaired Friends of the Earth International from 2008 through 2012. It's good to have you, Nnimmo. Now, it took 13 years to get justice at The Hague for this particular case. Has this opened the possibility of a floodgate of litigations by aggrieved Nigerians over oil spills by companies operating within the Niger Delta at an international court, you think?
The judgment at the Dutch court was extremely significant because it really threw a light on the fact that no matter how long injustice prevails, one day justice will prevail. And this is what we've seen after 13 years waiting for this kind of judgment. The case was filed in 2008. The first judgment was made in 2013. And in that case, out of the 4 cases, only one, Shell was found guilty of one. That's the case of Ikoda, which oil spill was in the public domain for about 3 months before it was stopped. And then these other 2 cases are from Oruma and one from Ogoni. So the judgment that was just declared is extremely significant because the harm suffered by the environment and the people is has been very extreme. The man you see on the photo, that's Chief Eric, the plaintiff from Goi, whose father was the original plaintiff. The father died, and he's pursued the case till death. And this is very, I believe, a big relief for him and for the memory of the 2 original plaintiffs who have lost their lives. And this is significant for the entire Niger Delta. The entire Niger Delta is like a sacrifice zone. And now this is giving the hope that things may not have to go on the way they've been going on.
Nnimmo Bassey, well, Shell has continued to argue that saboteurs are responsible for the leaks in underground oil pipes. Is there any truth to this, do you think?
If there's any truth into it, maybe about 10%. I mean, this is the same argument they've been carrying on from the late 1980s, even in advertisement in British newspapers. At a point, they were asked to prove it, otherwise they would not accept the advice, and they couldn't prove it, and the advice was stopped in those days. Now, today we do know that nobody could tamper with those high-pressure pipelines without having inside industry knowledge or having security cover. So the poor villagers are not responsible for this spillage. Just like the Nigerian law says, if oil spills occur due to sabotage, then the oil companies can wash their hands off being held responsible in terms of paying compensation for the damage done. And so they always claim it's sabotage. And we do know that the oil theft and pipe breakages that goes on in Niger Delta is at industrial level, and the poor common people who continue to suffer the impact of oil spills are not responsible.
Indeed, Mr. Bassey. Now, I would like your thought on previous Nigerian government stance and up till now, while this trial lasted over time. How would you describe it? Was it proactive, or they were just mere bystanders?
No, Nigerian government is totally, the Nigerian is totally complicit in all the cases. And this is because of the kind of joint venture partnership arrangement that we have in the petroleum sector. In most of those oil fields operations, the NNPC holds, the Nigerian government holds a larger share. And so when somebody sues Shell in Nigeria, you also sue the Nigerian government, if it's before the Nigerian court, because they are in bed together. So the Nigerian government, being an operator and being the regulator, is unable, and being in partnership with these polluters is unable to really hold them to account. That's why the Niger Delta is so devastated, because the same person who who is polluting is also expected to regulate and to remediate. This is a disaster. And until we change that legal architecture, unfortunately, you cannot ask the cat to protect the rat for you. This is a situation we have. There has been a divorce between the state and the international oil companies. And now the Nigerian oil companies who are operating in Nigeria, who are buying some of the oil wells or fields that the international companies are divesting from, are behaving just like the international oil companies, ignoring oil spills, ignoring the calls of communities, punishing the people, and further damaging the ecosystems.
And Mr. Bassey, you do know that in spite of this ruling, the case remains open to clarify the extent of pollution and whether or not cleanup is necessary. So do you fear that an appeal to this ruling is likely?
I doubt that Shell will appeal against. They already appealed against the one of the. They may want to waste time. The corporations have all the time on earth, but they should also be concerned about their social capital. If they appeal against this, it will be another attempt to shut off the people from getting justice and to keep delaying. The oil spill that occurred in Goi community, for example, is still there. They've not cleaned it. I've seen these reports where Shell said they've already taken care of the matter that brought this problem. They've not. And so if they appeal against this, it means they're spitting into the face of the plenty who have died, and also spitting on the faces of the people of Niger who've been so nice to them over 6 decades.
Indeed. Mr. Bassey, you're also an environmental activist. Now, the case was backed by the Netherlands arm of Environment Group of Friends of the Earth. How important or how significant are the impact of such groups in protecting our environment? All right, Mr. Bassey, I'm going to ask that question again. The case was backed by the Netherlands arm of Environment Group of Friends of the Earth. How impactful, how significant are their activities in such cases like we have here?
This is why international solidarity is very important. Friends of the Earth Netherlands is in the home country of Royal Dutch Shell. And so normally when cases are tried in Nigerian court, the oil companies don't pay much attention. For example, in 2005, the people of Iwereka in Delta State, in a case led by John Agbembre and supported by the Environmental Rights Action Friends of Nigeria, the case was held, the judgment was against Shell, that Shell is flaring gas in their communities, causing human rights abuses, and that they should stop the flaring. Now, because that judgment was in Nigeria, nothing was done. And it was only late last year, I think, sometime last year, that Shell appealed against that case, a judgment that was made in 2005. And so in this case, having Milo Defensie, Friends of the Netherlands, being in the driving seat, being a plaintiff along with the 4 farmers was extremely significant. And they've made several visits to Nigeria. They know our backyard quite well. And our farmers have gone to Netherlands. It's been a very beautiful cooperation. And so this is also a very laudable result. This kind of collaboration has to be expanded across the planet. Wherever international corporations come from, citizens in those countries who don't want to have their hands washed in blood, or who don't want to be complicit in what the corporations are doing elsewhere, they just have to speak up and team up with those in the far-flung places where these abuses are taking place. So this cooperation has been very significant, and we applaud Milo Defensie, Friends of the Earth Netherlands.
And Mr. Bassey, does this Dutch Appeal Court Judgement vindicate the likes of Kensara? We were an environmental rights activist.
Absolutely. Kensara said, one of the last things he said before he was killed in the Kangaroo Tribunal was that one day Shell will be in the dock. And to me, this was judgment comes. And judgment came in a very beautiful way, vindicating Sarawiwa, and especially with Goi community being a part of Ogoni land. And I should just say that in terms of Goi community, they don't have any oil well, they don't have any pipeline, they don't have any oil facility. all they have is the pollution. So when people talk about who is the host community, to me, the host community is both those who have those facilities and those who are just hosting the pollution because of the interconnected tidal water system that runs across Ogonia, the Niger Delta. So Kensara is again vindicated. It was vindicated by the UNEP report of 2011. Now it's vindicated by this court judgment at The Hague. And of course, he will continue to be vindicated and his memory will remain alive.
Very good, Mr. Bassey. Now, in 1 minute, how binding is the Hague judgment to Nigeria and the way oil business is being done?
The judgment is binding because whether Shell Nigeria likes it or not, it's a baby of Shell International. And they are not separate. They may be separate in terms of some documentations, but they can't afford. The Niger Delta is a very important field of operation for Shell Oil Company and for all the international companies who are operating here. This is where they make profit, they behave responsibly, they don't put anything back into the environment, and they just go scot-free. I don't think they want to abuse the privileges they have. This is very binding to. It's binding. They can't escape it. They just have to now go about discussing how much they're going to compensate the poor farmers for. We have a case, the case of Bodo, where about Bodo oil spill, where Bodo community took Shell to court in the UK. I mean, the Shell paid 51 or there about £1,000. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, we would leave it there. We would leave it there. Nnimmo Bassey, former chairman, Friends of the Earth and environmental activist, many thanks for your thoughts there. Thank you for joining us on Newsday.